This is the DELACK for the Bambu Lab A1 Mini, and this is the DELACK for the Bambu Lab A1 Mini with the AMS Lite. The DELACK is an enclosure kit that I designed that my company 3D Sourcerer sells. It's available for $120 on Amazon. Here's what all you get in the kit. Plexiglass, an LED light strip with a wall adapter, nuts, bolts, dowel rods, magnets, bearings, a USB A and C thumb drive, and rubber plugs for the enclosure. In this video, I'm going to show you the assembly process. We're going to start off with just a standard A1 Mini and an IKEA light table. These tables are around $20 at IKEA. So before we get started with the build, I just wanted to run through a couple things. This is the listing on Amazon currently. I'll probably update this main picture to show the one for the AMS unit as well. So this will change by the time that you're able to go to this listing. But just look for the listing where it's sold by 3D Sourcerer. It comes up pretty quickly if you type in DELACK 3D printer enclosure. So check for that. And within the kit, there's a QR code, and I'll show you that now. So here's the QR code, and this will take you to the assembly guide. And the reason we do a online assembly guide is because we update it pretty regularly. So if you printed off an assembly guide, it would be static. So we want you guys to have the most updated version of it, which is why we do this. So if you scan the QR code or if you type in this link, it takes you to our website, and then you just have to select the DELACK for the A1 Mini. So you're going to click here, and then here is the assembly guide. And if you don't want to type out the whole URL and you just want to go to the website, just go to 3dsourcerer.com. Up here, click on downloads and assembly guides, and then find the DELACK enclosure, expand that, and then go down to the assembly guide, and that brings you to this same page that we were at a minute ago, and then you're going to click on this. And so this is kind of your main page for assembling everything, and in this video I'm basically going to be following the steps that I talk about here. The video that you're seeing now should be here. These are just some frequently asked questions that I go over. You can read that whenever you get a chance, and just some tips for assembly that might come in handy as you kind of put everything together. And then these are the alternative prints, which are some different prints you can use that are different from the standard prints. So for instance, if you want the hinge to be on the opposite side, we have hinge on left here. We have a different tank. We have a version without an LED light if you want to go with that. So just read through some of these. And then these are the steps that I'm going to follow here. And I also have just a step-by-step guide taking you through that in a visual way of how to put everything together. If the video doesn't work, you might want to check this out. So I'm essentially going to be following this with the video, but just wanted to go through this to make sure that if you don't like the video or if it's going too fast, you can always just follow this. And I pretty much assemble everything in the same order as I do on the assembly guide in the video. So it should follow pretty closely. And the last thing I wanted to show y'all really quick was the download. So if you click here, this takes you to our Maker World profile, and then the pin model is the main print. And if I click on that, you can see here that there's different versions. So this is the standard print, this is the one without the AMS unit, and then this is the one with the AMS unit. And the only big difference between those two are the stand, and then there's also this little gap here, which I talk about a little bit in the video. So just wanted to go through that. And then there's also these alt prints, which I was discussing earlier. So you can just look through those. And then if you want to just print the stand, I also have a separate profile for that. So that's pretty much it for this. I just wanted to go through it with y'all, and now we can go back to the video. Thanks. We'll start by assembling the skirt. Start off by adding the rubber plugs to the 4 corner pieces. They're a little tight, but should push into place. Next, add 2 clips to each side of the corner feet, and then attach the 8 medium-length skirt pieces to each side of the corner pieces. You should end up with 4 corner pieces that look like this. Now you should either have 2 short solid pieces if you're printing the non-AMS version, or you'll have these 2 pieces with a gap for the AMS version, where the cable going from the AMS to the printer can run through the wall of the enclosure. I'm assembling the non-AMS version for now, but I'll switch it up later for the AMS version. Next, find the long skirt piece with the cutout and add it to the back, and then add the solid piece that's the same length to the front. Your skirt should look something like this with just one section missing. Next up is the removable tank. Make sure you pay attention to how this rail piece fits onto the 2 wall pieces. It only works one way, so double check that before adding the wall piece, and then put the rail over the top to join them together. It should look something like this. Now that the skirt is finished, I would go ahead and add the nuts to all the bottom, middle, and top corner pieces. To prevent accidentally scratching the plexiglass during assembly, I would peel the plastic off just far enough to access each hole like this. Next, carefully add the top corner pieces and middle corner pieces to build out the plexiglass walls. Make sure that the holes in the middle of the 2 side pieces are at the top, since we'll be using those for middle supports later on. Once all the walls are assembled, go ahead and put the walls onto the skirt and add the bolts to the bottom holes to secure everything into place. At this point, your build should look something like this. Now let's add the side middle support pieces. If you have any trouble with the nuts going into place, you can always screw the bolt on from the opposite side like this to pull the nut into the hole. After adding the two middle supports, go ahead and add the back bottom cover as well. Since we're almost done with the enclosure walls, let's go ahead and remove the rest of the plastic covering the acrylic. If you aren't planning to add a fan to the enclosure, go ahead and cover up the fan hole with the fan hole cover. You'll need 4 of these nut adapters that are printed with the cover. Now is also a good time to go ahead and add the rubber plugs to the holes around the fan cover as well. Next up is the nameplate. You can customize what it says however you want. The plate slides into the front support piece like this and then attaches like the other pieces. Now, since the sides are done, we can put the enclosure around the printer. Make sure you take the tank off before moving it so it won't fall off or break anything. The power cable should run out of the back of the enclosure like this once it's in the correct position. Here's your first glimpse of what the enclosure is going to eventually look like. Next, let's focus on the door. Start off by adding the magnets to the latches. Use a metal tool to push the magnets into place. Make sure that they're oriented so that they're attracting each other. One easy way to do this is to just stack the magnets on top of each other. Also, make sure you break off the supports under the overhangs of the hinges with some pliers. The reason the hinges only go on one side is because the dowel hole should be on top so the dowel rod doesn't slide out the bottom of the hinge. After all the magnets are in place, add the nuts to the latches and hinges as well. Now find the plexiglass door and add the hinges, latches, and doorknob to it. Make sure you peel the cover away as you add the parts. Now that the door is finished, you can add it to the frame. This is probably the trickiest part of the enclosure assembly, so just try to support the door the best you can. After you have the hinges and latches installed, the door might bump the latch when it closes. If this is the case, loosen the hinge a little bit and pull up on the handle and retighten the hinges down to get the latch to fit better. Next up is the sealing with the light. I think the easiest way to assemble it is to lay the parts out like this and then feed the light through the LED support piece and around the rest of the light. Push the switch into the slot and then add the remaining pieces to get everything to tighten up. You might need to use a tool or extra bolt to push the nuts all the way into the part. I have a video from a while back talking about the assembly process for the light, so check that out if you're interested. Then, to attach the light to the top piece, let it overhang off the edge so you can attach it like this. You'll need these little pieces to fill the hole so that the bolts will fit correctly. Once that's in place, the bolt that attaches to the LED support piece is self-threading, so you might need to press pretty hard to get it started. When you're finished, it should look something like this. You can just lay it into place now. Bolting down the LED to the back panel is optional. It makes it a little less convenient to remove the top, but it does make it a little more sturdy. So for this example, I'll add the bolts to the rear, as you can see here. Now that the top is installed, you can add the finishing touches with the corner covers. You might have realized by now that it's going to be difficult to reach the filament in the standard position on the A1 Mini, so I recommend printing off my universal filament holder design. It's pretty straightforward to print and it works with the bearings that are included in the kit. There's really two good options for the filament path from outside of the enclosure. One option is to print off this magnetic filament guide that I made that attaches to where the filament usually goes. Once you have that in place, you just run the filament from above through the guide and into the PTFE tube, which is in the usual position on the printer. The other option, and the one that I prefer, is to move the PTFE tube altogether. Start off by detaching the tube from the printer, then find one of the rubber plugs and use something to put a hole in the middle of it so that you can run the tube through the plug like this. I even made a little printed part that goes around the plug to make it look seamless on top of the enclosure. Now it's pretty straightforward to switch out filament on top of the enclosure. Once the filament is in place, add plugs to the rest of the open holes, and now you're finished with the enclosure for now. That's pretty much it for the standard A1 Mini DELACK build. Overall, the enclosure fits the A1 Mini pretty well. If you're curious about the filament that I used to print off the enclosure, I used Bambu Lab Matte Ivory White PLA and Matte Ash Gray PLA for these parts. If you have an AMS Lite, there are a few changes to make and an important extra thing to print off. To start off, you'll either need to buy another IKEA lac table or you can buy one of these IKEA lac coffee tables. I like the coffee table because you can store stuff on the shelf underneath it. Next, you need to switch out this side piece if you haven't already. This is so the AMS cord can reach the printer. Make sure you disconnect the filament tube from the top of the enclosure and then remove the 8 bolts, 2 on each corner, so that you can remove the top of the enclosure from the skirt. Then gently pull the pieces apart and install the pieces with the opening in the middle like this. Another thing that you'll need to print off is this AMS Lite stand that I designed. It's pretty straightforward to assemble, and it holds 3 boxes of Bambu Lab filament under it as well. The reason you need this is because the filament tubes aren't long enough if the AMS Lite is on the table next to the enclosure. There's 2 little cubbies at the front of the stand to store tools in it as well. Those are the only major changes needed. The next thing to do is to get the filament tubes from the AMS in place. The way to do this is by inserting this rubber piece into the hole here and then adding each PTFE tube to the enclosure. It's pretty tight, but it works pretty well once it's in place. I've printed hundreds of hours with it like this, with a ton of filament changes, and I haven't had any issues. You'll just need to make sure that the AMS unit is close by the DELACK so that it doesn't run out of tubing. Here's how it looks with everything assembled. I'm pretty biased, but it turned out pretty nice in my opinion. One benefit of the DELACK is that we have accessory prints to customize your enclosure. Here's 2 of the accessory prints that'll give you an idea of how they work. This first one is the Wise camera mount for the DELACK. It attaches to the corner like this. We also have these alternate top support pieces that have cable channels for cable management, so I'm going to exchange the current ones for this version. I'd recommend printing the cable channel version for the LED light if you plan to ever add a camera like this, because it's a little bit annoying to have to take the light apart and put it back together. Here's how the Wisecam V4 looks after it's installed, and this is what the camera feed looks like from my phone. Another useful thing for your setup is if you buy a Wise plug like this, you can remotely cut power to the A1 Mini if you see a print failure. Another useful set of prints is the fan and filter attachment. This is a generic 120mm Noctua fan. It attaches to the back of the enclosure like this, and then you can add this HEPA filter mount for air filtering. There's also a duct mount available if you want to vent the enclosure externally, as well as a bunch of other accessory prints on our website. And here's the final version of the DELACK with all the accessories installed. Alright, so that's about it for the DELACK enclosure assembly guide for the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. Hopefully this is something you'll consider. It's an enclosure that obviously I developed and put a lot of time and effort into, but I think it is pretty compatible with the Bambu Lab A1 Mini, especially with these modifications like the tank, for the extra filament, and turned out to work pretty well with the AMS unit as I demonstrated. So I think for most people, it's a pretty good option. It's not for everyone. It does take some printing, on your own, but thankfully the A1 Mini is pretty consistent as far as that goes. So it's really just kind of plug and play. Even if you're a beginner, it's something that, if you can put together Legos, you can probably put together this enclosure. So hopefully this is something you'll consider. And if you're not interested in the enclosure and just watching the video, consider subscribing. I have a lot of different things coming up kind of in the pipeline that I have planned for this channel. If you enjoyed the build and you're happy with the product, please consider leaving us a review. I know that I personally forget to leave reviews when I get a product that I'm happy with or that it's kind of meets my expectations, but a lot of people, if anything is wrong, they're quick to leave a 1-star review. So it would really help us out if you have a good experience to leave a good review on Amazon for us. If you have any issues whatsoever, I'll be happy to address those. I do all that I can to fix any issues that come up. So just reach out. We have some contact information on our website, so just check it out there. If you have any problems with your kit, I'll be sure to make things right for you. So thanks again for all your support. I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching.